What's happening, people? Thanks for tuning on in. Tobin here with you. It was boots on the ground yesterday at the Pat Riley press conference. A lot of fun things happening. Old Riles was bringing his fastball yesterday. I don't even want to call him Old Riles. Dude was challenging people to push-ups and telling Ira Winderman he'll out-push-up him. I was thinking like Riley, we were talking about this on the radio show today. And if you're a fan of the show, by the way, of Tobin and Leroy, you guys can get that. I'll put it in the description here. YouTube.com/The Ticket Miami is where you guys can find Tobin and Leroy, which is every single weekday from 6 to 10 a.m. So check us out there. Subscribe there so you got some more silly sauce, some more fun. But we were wondering like how many push-ups Pat Riley could drop down. Now, Leroy always poo-poos it. He's always just like, I don't know, 20, 25. I feel like Riles, like if he really wanted to dial it up, he's hitting like 40, 50. Like really putting Ira to shame. But he was feeling good. He was feeling good yesterday, man. I love those Pat Riley press conferences. You always want to know what are the messages, what are we going to be looking for, what are the goosies, what are the things he's going to say. He's going to give us a whale, an orca, sharpening the harpoons, a guts moment, smiling faces with hidden agendas. Yesterday, I think like the thing that stood out the most was the call-outs. Honestly, like you could tell he's very, very, very raw still from the loss. Like the loss to Boston has stuck with him. He referred to it as the dragon yesterday, not Goran Dragic. He was he's still hurt. He's still bitter over the way things went down. This was Riley yesterday.
Well, I definitely feel an obligation to finish this build. And so if we're 3 years into this build, then I don't want to do another 3 years of just building this team. I mean, I think we're in that window of internal improvement. We got a great player in Jimmy Butler. We know that. We have a lot of real experienced veterans. And so we put together a team that got to the Eastern Conference Finals, and it was bitter. It was a bitter loss. I mean, the dragon hasn't, actually left my body yet from that loss. It was, I was stunned. I was frustrated. I was angry. I was all of those things, for the last week. And now I'm beginning to move on past all of that. And so I haven't given that any thought at all, Ira, And so until somebody brings it to me, other than the media, I'm 77 years old. And right now I can do more push-ups than you can do right now. If you want to go to the mat, let's go.
Shirts off, Riley.
Can you see that?
No one needs to see that. Like the dragon is there, dude. It's lingering. And so, that led to a lot of topics I'll probably get into in a couple of videos here. The one that I want to hit here is on Tyler Herro, because I think it is, first of all, is the thing that I asked about. And he's the most interesting player going into this offseason for Miami because for a couple of reasons. One, he's at a fascinating age. He's 22 years old, going to be 23 in next January, so in the middle of next year. He's up for an extension. He is the sixth man of the year. He said last week that he wants to start. He feels that he is not only that he wants to start, he feels he's earned the right to start. If you guys missed it, this was Tyler.
Tyler, you accepted the bench role this year, and you made the best of it, obviously. You ended up winning sixth man of the year. Is it a priority for you this offseason to become a starter, a full-time starter for this team next year?
Yeah, for sure. In some way, I would like to start. I think it's my fourth year, so I think I've earned it, and we'll see what happens.
So he made it clear that he thought that he had earned the starting spot, that it was his, that he had done everything there is to do. And in ways I do agree with Tyler. I don't think that he should be ripped for wanting that. I don't even really think he should be ripped for thinking that. I remember asking Pat about Tyler before the year where he's just like, I asked him about what he's expecting of him. And, he's seen all the quotes of like, don't sleep on me, all this type of stuff. Well, they're going to be coming after you. And I think in the regular season, he really flourished. He came through fantastic. In the postseason, it wasn't the case. Even with the injuries, we don't know what he was dealing with, but everybody's dealing with something. So let's just say that it wasn't up to par even before the injury. Like, he's a guy who averaged over 20 a year, nearly 21 points a game. He reached that twice in the postseason. So I think it was interesting to find out from Pat what he thought of Tyler's postseason and what he thought of his comments, and asked him about it. And this is what Riley had to say.
Pat, obviously, Tyler had a fantastic season, winning Sixth Man of the Year. Curious what you thought of his postseason before the injury, and he said last week that he does want to start next season. What does he have to do to kind of solidify that for the next part of his career?
Well, I think his numbers speak for, him and in his game. Averaging 20 a game and, really shooting the ball well, developing a game that at times during the regular season's unstoppable for him to try to find a shot. He can find and create his own shots in a lot of different situations. So I don't even think he's here yet, really here yet as a full-time, complete player. And I say that about a player that averaged 20 and shot 37, 38% from three, can score in bunches, can score at the rim, can score on floaters, can score on pull-ups, can score on threes. He gets out on the break. And he's 22. He's 21, 22 years old. So, the next step for him, and I think we're seeing this in the league, if you want to win a championship and you want to be a starter, you really have to become a two-way player today. And you have to improve in certain areas of your game. Now, we all know that at one time or another, teams will always put a target on Tyler's back or Duncan's back or Max's back or somebody else that they think they can beat one-on-one on a switch. And so I saw improvement in his defense this year. He's got great feet. He's got quick feet, and he just needs to get stronger again, and another 10 pounds of muscle mass, and he just needs to get stronger from a leverage standpoint, because I think he still has a lot to the upside. But as far as being a starter, come to training camp and win it.
So a few things are fascinating there. It's like there's the good, Pat Riley, he's like one of these managers, like he'll fluff you up, give you the negative, kind of fluff you up again. And I think it's interesting that he looks upon Tyler Herro and he thinks to himself that this is a guy who I think is very talented, can score at all levels, shows the dynamic element that he's got to his game, but has to improve. Like it's becoming such a thing that he gets hunted on the floor defensively, and that he needs to improve defensively. Now, are we expecting Tyler Herro to go out there and he's going to turn all of a sudden into Gary Payton? No, I don't think. I mean, he can talk trash like Gary Payton, but I don't know if he's ever going to be that kind of a defender. I do agree with him that I think you saw some improvements, like, being able to get into some passing lanes and things like that. But as far as, we know standing in front of guys, can he avoid being beat up like that? It's going to be a big question. It's going to be a big question for him, especially with staying on the floor and not getting played off in a series. I think the strength thing is probably the most obvious that stood out during the playoffs, that teams were definitely more physical with him, caused him to turn the ball over, just couldn't get to the spots with the comfortability that he did in the regular season. I think also part of that was his three-point shot was gone. It was just non-existent in the postseason as well. So if you have a Tyler Herro who's knocking it down more, does that guy become harder to guard? Or is he just getting beaten down into that to where he doesn't have the legs? I don't know. I think these are all fascinating questions. And then the idea of him starting, he's like, well, go out and earn it. It's a pretty simple call out from Pat. Like, if you think you're going to get it, go out and get it. We know that they tried to do this whole thing this year with Tyler where it's like, you're the sixth starter, he plays starter minutes, he was second in scoring. Like, Tyler Herro had everything other than the Mike Biamonte Open. Like, he really was treated like a starter, but probably him coming off the bench probably cost him an all-star spot. I think that it did. It still is a perception thing, and he doesn't want to be in that. He wants to be in the category of young stars of this league, and I don't quite know if nationally he's put there yet. So The challenge though is upon him. Like they're putting it on him to go out there and get better and get better. You can't just be capped at, oh, you were the great sixth man of the year. Now that should just transition into being a good starter. It's almost essentially what was from the first year, which I know had like no offseason for him. So I give him some grace there. But then like let's hand him over the keys to be the starter, and it was too much too soon. Now he's going to be going into his fourth year. He'll have a real offseason again. They're asking him to get stronger, but there is going to be, for him, a tough mental hurdle because he has talked about trade rumors affecting him and trade rumors getting to him and that he had to get to a point where he didn't anymore. Like it or not, maybe the biggest Tyler Herro fan in the world. I don't know. I love Tyler Herro. I think he's one of the most popular Heat players on the team. Big pops. I think the world of his talent. I think he's got big time work ethic. But certainly are questions of, is a 22-year-old guy, 22-year-old dynamic scorer, is he going to be on par physically for these playoff series to be there with Jimmy Butler to really give him that running mate? It was a big theme yesterday. Because if the Heat really don't believe that's the case, then I do think that there's going to be a question about whether or not he has to whether or not they have to upgrade there somewhere. So I think for me, if the mental stuff was an issue of dealing with the trade rumors, I think that's going to be a thing again this year. I do think that Tyler is going to be in every trade rumor. Donovan Mitchell, Bradley Beal, Damian Lillard, Brandon Ingram, you name it. You name the guy that you think could potentially be out there for the Heat. The thing you're going to lead every trade offer with is going to be 22-year-old sixth man of the year for a couple of reasons. One, if you bring in a player that is essentially of his skill set, but maybe just a little bit more matured, a little bit more proven, what are you going to have Tyler Herro here for, especially if he doesn't want to be on a team where he's going to be coming off the bench? And secondly, it's your best tradable asset, like bar none. I don't think they're going. I mean, their best tradable asset is Bam, but I don't think they're ever going to trade Bam. I don't think that's going to be the case. I think that the only place where I could see that being a scenario, and I'm not even a fan of this, is if the Joel Embiid thing becomes a thing. Then I think that 76ers don't do that probably unless you trade Bam and Tyler for Joel Embiid, and I'm not into that. But I don't think Bam's getting traded. I think that they believe in Bam. I think that Riley spoke yesterday. He said that he thinks that Bam Adebayo should get half the paycheck from Duncan Robinson, Tyler Herro, and Max Strus.
Way. Speaking particularly to Bam, he's been asked to do a lot of things, as a young player, and he has grown into being very efficient at doing these things. So, it's almost that learning curve of being a facilitating big, either at the elbow on handoffs, on pick and rolls, or whatever he's doing. He's always getting somebody open. Duncan should pay him half his check. Tyler should pay him half his check. Max should pay him half his check. I mean, you don't realize what he does to get people open. And a lot of that has to do with how other teams are playing him because they're dropping way back and we can get that shot. But maybe we look for that a little bit too much. This could be a year, and Spo and I'll sit down and talk about it, about how can Bam be developed in a way to improve his consistent shot ability every night, getting 15 shots every night, and quality shots, that he can get, that he can create, whether it's in the post, whether it's the elbow or whatever. He can be very prolific at times, but it can't always just be on effort, on running, on offensive rebounds, on lob dunks, on little floaters. I do think there's a part of him that can grow, and so that's dependent a little bit on your overall offensive philosophy and how much you want to change that. But I think you're right. I think there's another level at his age now that we need more consistency in his ability to get good shots, create good shots for himself and us, and score.
So it's a couple things there full with Bam where it's like, yes, he has to do all these things to get these guys open. And also we need to find a way to get him engaged to take 15 shots a game, and especially in the playoffs. And I think one of the things that's tough is we saw the struggles of this Heat team shooting the basketball during the postseason, and you would think that Bam is probably trying even harder to get those guys open, where maybe the best option was, hey, just get yourself open. Like, let's go in that direction. We saw a couple of games of it in the Celtics series. We certainly saw flashes of it all the rest of the playoffs. Also, keeping in mind, though, that the big difference, though, between Bam and Tyler is Bam Adebayo you can't take off the floor because he's the best defender on your team, arguably one of the best defenders in the league, has to guard the best player on the team, whether it be from Joel Embiid to Jason Tatum to Trae Young to whomever. You're going to throw him on the best guy on the floor at some point in a game, and he's going to make a big-time impact. I think, what was it? The Celtics were 2 for 14 against him in Game 7, I think was the number. He's sick. He's just that good at defense that you can't afford it, right? The thing that I regret not asking, though, about in this press conference is about Tyler's contract, because I thought it was just naturally going to get put there. And then, Riley hits you with that, aura and wisdom, and you just kind of get lost in the sauce of it all. But it was asked after the 2020 finals, which was a less bitter loss because your team was just genuinely broken. I think that Bam, with the year of being an all-star, an all-defensive player, at the time was 23 years old, you're going to give him his max deal. Like, that was just going to happen. With Tyler being eligible for the extension, I think that they still have questions. I think that for most franchises, Tyler unquestionably would get his extension. I don't think it's a debate. But now I think they're kind of in that maybe Phoenix Suns, DeAndre Ayton spot where it's like, well, is this guy an essential cornerstone of our championship future? And if he is he going to speed up on the timeline enough to get to the point where he's going to be worth, like, our core going forward is Jimmy, Tyler, Bam, and that's good enough? And that's something they may have to decide. Maybe they're going to ruffle his feathers this year and they're not going to offer him anything, and they'll just give him the qualifying offer, and it'll roll over into next year and restricted free agency and all that type of stuff. But I think with Bam, it was just they said flat out, and Pat, I remember him saying that we're going to do right by Bam. We're going to take care of Bam. And I do wish that either I or somebody else would have asked about Tyler's contract situation, because Kyler kind of just left it to going to be up to my agent. They'll have the talks on that. And I'm curious to know what Tyler's thoughts are, because he says he clearly wants to start. He clearly wants to be one of the faces of the team, which he's not gonna be the face of this team. The face of this team is Jimmy Butler. And Pat Riley says things like, I'm going to run it. I have to see this build go through. He means I have to go win a championship in Jimmy Butler's window. I feel I owe it to him. I feel like that's the guy. He said yes. I was looking for all these Orcas. I was looking for somebody to say yes. That guy was Jimmy Butler. He said yesterday, he was asked about the confrontation from a couple of months ago with Spo, and he goes, somebody asked, like, oh, who does Jimmy Butler remind you of with the intensity and competitiveness? He goes, me. Reminds me of me. And that just respect that they have for each other, I think, is what drives them both to try and get to this goal of getting to the title. And when you're 77 years old and you're challenging Ira Winderman to push-up contests, and he does. I thought, Riley, I thought yesterday was as on in a press conference as he's been in a long time. Like, maybe it's just like not being on Zoom or whatever, but he was still wearing the loss of the Celtics. I think it's probably because it was the Celtics, because it was such a finality, such a thud at the end. Riley was on point yesterday with what he was bringing to the table. And I think that he's trying to think, like, what is the right combination with Jimmy Butler to get there? Is it a complete overhaul? Is it we need a better in shape? Is a better in shape Kyle Lowry? Is a more polished Tyler Herro? Is a more aggressive Bam Adebayo? Does that give us the right mix to win the championship? Or do I have to look elsewhere and bring something in next to Jimmy Butler? I think he's going to be weighing a lot of those questions this offseason. But the Tyler Herro one is, to me, the most fascinating question of the offseason, bar none, because of a lot of factors. Like, it's not – I don't think any of this is a factor of Tyler Herro being not a good player, not potentially a star, all that. It's just, is it going to be at the time they need him to be at the same time where Jimmy Butler is at the peak of his powers like he is? And if they think he is, then this is a no-brainer. I mean, like, you bring Tyler Herro back, you lock him in, and, you know, I think you have a nice core there between him, Tyler, and Bam. But you need a lot more from Tyler. I think, like, with Bam, it's like, I think you need a little bit more from Bam, and you need to adjust some mindset stuff. And but I don't feel like it's that far away. Like, we've seen 46 minutes, 46 and a half minutes in a game 7, 25 and 10 or 25 and 11, whatever the hell it was in a game 7. You know it's there with him. With Tyler, it's a question of durability, physicality, and all that type of stuff. I think those question marks are still there. With Bam, maturity is not a question. Physical maturity is not a question. Durability is not a question. The only thing with him is really like, hey, can we get him in the mindset of, just like Jimmy, they had to do this with Jimmy too. Like, can we get him in the mindset of, hey, you're our best scoring option here too. We need you to be alongside him and you guys to be a 1-2 punch that people hate dealing with. So it's a fascinating thing to look into. Lots more to dive into with this Pat Riley press conference, but I thought the Tyler Herro stuff, to me, was numero uno.